All right, we are live. We are live here right now, guys. This is Brandon Hanley, Fatherhood for the Rest of Us, on with Steve Miller, founder of the Manly Club. Steve's got quite a storied past, more so than I was actually aware of. Aside from the Manly Club, he's got a father. He's got boys of 8 and 13. Entrepreneur, writer, business owner, sales and marketing consultant, business startup consultant, former Silicon Valley executive, founder and co-founder of multiple companies with multiple exits, former VP sales for a multi-million-dollar home improvement company, founder of the Manly Club. And Steve, like I said, I know you from the group on Facebook Live or Facebook, and I had no idea like how deep it went. So I'm pretty excited to have you on. Meg, my wife, is all watching us as well right now. Before we get started on any of it, why don't you tell me something awesome that's going on in your life? What kind of exciting things can we celebrate today for you?
Well, I'm really, first of all, I'm really excited being here with you. I appreciate the opportunity. I love what you're doing. There's a lot of fatherhood sites out there. There's a lot of fatherhood vlogs. There's a lot of fatherhood podcasts. And I just think it's great. I think it's great. They're all good. And it's something that a couple of years ago just didn't exist. When I became a dad for the first time, I was on my own. You just get thrown right into the water, and you just have to survive and somehow just figure it out. Well, now there's resources. It's
Right.
great. There's a place to go. I remember talking to friends of mine about being a dad for the first time. I was older. I was 36, 37 before I became a dad for the first time. And I remember talking to my friends who've been, dads forever. And they had no idea. I would ask them questions that I thought were important, and things that I was concerned about becoming a dad. I would ask them questions about, legacy and, about college prep, and these guys, they knew nothing. It was just amazing. And now, you just jump online, on your phone, you jump online, you ask a question, and there's so many resources. It's just fantastic. So I have a lot of admiration for what you're doing.
I appreciate
I really love it. I'm being a dad now for as long as I have with the 2 boys. Everything pales in comparison. Everything pales. There's nothing even comes close to being a dad. We talked a lot about success on the Manly Club, in the Facebook group. We talked a lot about legacy. We talked a lot about making money. We talked a lot about self-mastery, all these different things. And for me, fatherhood is above all of that. So there's not even it's not even in the same category. So you have fatherhood at the top, and then you have, on this separate realm, you have all these other things, you have all
everything else.
Everything else after that. So nothing interferes with my fatherhood. And a lot of what I'm doing today, a lot of the stuff that I'm proud of, you asked, what's going on today? A lot of the things that I'm doing today it all orbits around fatherhood. It all orbits around being able to be here at home in my home office with my kids, 20 feet away with my wife. She homeschools our 2 boys.
Okay.
And being able to run my business, whatever that is, here, and have them right there, and my wife able to homeschool the boys and spend that quality time with them. Everything I've done since the day my first son was born revolves around that, and I'm just so happy to be able to do that every day. And part of my legacy, what I want to be able to say in retrospect, is that not only that I did it, it's great. I'm proud of myself, and I love that I've set this up, but I also want to, because my mentors along the way, they didn't want anything from me. They didn't ask me for anything. When they were helping me in business, and they were helping me through the scanner topic that we'll talk about in a minute. When they were helping me, they asked me for one thing in return. one thing, and I had two of them. I had two mentors that helped me the most, and both of them asked me the same exact thing, which is, once you make it, turn around and look behind you, and see who's behind you on the path, and then help them.
That's
And
great.
so their message was, just pay it forward.
Right.
Just pay it forward. So that's what I'm doing now. You know, I'm not done with my legacy. I'm not done making money. I'm not done with anything by any stretch of the imagination, but I'm ready to start now. And that's what the Manly Club is all about. That's what I'm so happy about.
Yeah, no. So yeah, you've got the Manly Club going.
Yep.
You're just around, or just, I mean, did you just break over 1,000, or you're just about 1,000 people in the group right now?
We're almost 1,200.
Yeah, and it's been what, like 90 days or something?
Yeah, we're a week shy of our 90-day mark, and we're at 1,200.
Okay, yeah. I mean, I stumbled into that like a drunken sailor, the group.
That's all right.
But I'm really glad that I did. And the groups, Facebook groups, are kind of new to me. You talk about resources that are available for fathers and pretty much anybody, right? Resources that are just plainly available. And I just recently joined a couple of different groups, and yours is one that I happen to join. And yeah, I've enjoyed watching it grow. I've enjoyed watching your engagement in there. And I've enjoyed the challenges that you issue. Again, the engagement that you have in there, the questions, they're good questions. It's not, I don't feel like, there are some groups that you can kind of pop into and you can feel like you're being patronized. And I don't feel like I'm being patronized when I join, hop in there for a second or two. If I ask a question or give a response, I feel like it's valued on either side. So I appreciate you having the group and hosting it the way that you have. And I can see in there that, you talk about the Manly Club, but you also talk about, right now you're talking about the mentorship and paying it forward. And one of the primary reasons for me, just it was like a just massive reaction for me. You posted this statement about scanners, and I don't even know how to categorize. Is that like a psychological head fit? Is it a personality type? I don't know how to kind of answer or state that. I said that, I shouted out earlier. I was like, I'm just going to let Steve handle that because he knows what he's talking about. I did pick up one of the books that you mentioned. I feel like I identify. You asked me earlier if I identify with the scanner, and I feel like I do. I feel like it's kind of like you run around and you're look, man. We're I think more so as men, or most people, Americans. I'll put it out there, but we beat ourselves up if we see ourselves not fitting in a certain category or a certain area from time to time. And when you shared that, man, I was like, it was like lightning to a lightning rod. It just felt right, and I wanted to get you on to share this with other people because I think it's huge. So if you could, I mean, if you don't mind, like let's definitely. I'd love to just kind of hone in on that a little bit because I think it's going to tie into fatherhood, fathers, things that we can teach our children. Maybe we can identify our children as scanners, all that, right? So I'll let you run off with that one, Steve.
Yeah, well, and the reaction you had was the same reaction I had when I made that discovery about myself. And the term scanners is just the easiest term to use because it's the easiest to remember. There's multi-passionate entrepreneurs. There's multi-potentiality people that, I mean, there's all these different terms, and they're all really awkward and weird. And so scanners fits very well just because, for me, it's very descriptive. But it's not a well-known term. I mean, you yourself, you're out there, you're living your life, you're doing all these things, and you never heard the term scanners, right? And same thing with me. I had never heard the term scanners, and for years. And the reason why it's such an enlightening moment, like what you had, was because I'll just give you the quick definition of scanners. Scanners are anybody who struggles with staying with one thing, particularly a job, a career. If you lose interest, if you find yourself wanting to jump from thing to thing, and you feel different, and you feel kind of a little ashamed. I went through this from 18 to 36. I call it the drift. From
Okay.
when I was in high school, I wanted to play high school football. In my senior year, I was in a motorcycle accident, and that dream died. And so I didn't have a plan because I wasn't going to college. After I lost football, I said that's it. I was done. I didn't want to go to college. If I couldn't play football, I threw it all away. So it took me about a year to recover from the accident. And then after that accident, from 18 to 36, I just worked off.
Sure.
And I could not stick with anything. I was a machinist. I was a sheet metal mechanic. I worked in retail sales. I worked in lumber yards. I tried to get into the newspaper industry. I did every single possible thing. And a lot of young people do that. But for me, the reason why I was so different is I started to do that into manhood. I started to do that as a grown man in my 20s. I was still doing that. The problem that I had was I lost interest. I just didn't want any part of that. Once I mastered it, I was immediately on a downhill slope of not wanting to do it anymore. I needed something else to master. Otherwise, I had this angst. I call it angst, where it's just this feeling of discomfort. You don't know what's wrong. You can't describe it. If someone says, "Hey, what's wrong?" Yeah, I don't know. I just never knew. All I knew is I wasn't fitting in.
Right. Sure.
My family was like, "What are you doing? You were a machinist. Now you're a sheet metal. Doesn't it take a long time to train and become a machinist?" It was like, yeah, it took me a long time. It took me a couple of years. But then I was sick of it. I wanted to do sheet metal. And you lose people. You lose people.
Right.
They think that you're on a path of self-destruction. And that's what I thought too. And so I kind of lived that. I wasn't, I don't have any stories about jail or, I didn't, steal stuff. I didn't get heavily into drugs or alcoholism. I didn't really go off the deep end.
Sure.
I just struggled, and it was really bad. So I didn't know what was going on. All I knew was I was hopscotching from one thing to the other. I got married. I was married for 9 years, wound up divorced. So
Okay.
here I was, 36 years old, and like I said, I call those years the drift, right? I was just drifting from one thing to the next. I was 36 years old, and I had no idea what was wrong. I knew that my marriage was over. I knew that I didn't want anything. I didn't appreciate any of the work that I had done. It just seemed like it was all over, and now I was going to try to find out what to do next. Well, that's a bad place to be. You feel like you're just lost, and I was lost. Anyway, so I decided I needed to get my mind right. I knew that there was something going on, and I started trying to find out. I started researching what is going on, what is wrong.
Now you're 36 when you start doing this, right?
I started doing this about 36. Yeah, I'm 50 now, so it was,
Okay.
it was a while ago. And so, what I did was I went out, I started looking, I started asking people, I started researching, I started trying to find out what was going on. I wanted to put my finger on it. I wanted to identify it. And I found stoicism, and I found things like self-mastery. I found these things, and it put me on the trail, put me on the path, and I started calming down. I started meditating. I started really kind of appreciating life itself. I started, I studied Buddhism. I got really into stoicism, but everything slowed down. Everything, my mind, the monkey mind. You've heard of monkey mind?
Yeah.
It's just your brain just goes and goes and goes, right? And so I knew I needed to slow that down. So I worked on that first. Well, one day during my research, I was continuing to try to fix myself. I wanted to get my mind right. And so one day along that, while I was doing that research, I ran into the scanner concept. And the scanner concept, just like you, Brandon, when you read it, it was like a slap in the face, right? It was like, oh, that's it, right? That's it. It was just, and it was a burden. It was lifted off of me.
All
It
right.
was like a moment of clarity. It was like I felt lighter. I physically felt lighter.
Literally, yes. Quite. I mean, Steve. I mean, I think you posted it like 2 or 3 weeks ago, and I literally, I felt like, not the weight of the world, but it was like definitely a large weight had been lifted. Ordered the book, and jammed on that. Found the type of scanner that I was right away, and I'm like, wow, it's pretty cool. But I'm gonna let you keep going with it. Definitely like a lightning rod. Now, how did you
Let's do some
stumble?
quick questions.
Let's do some questions. Absolutely.
Because I think it's really important. These questions are designed for for anybody listening to this now and in the future. They're designed to determine if this might be something for you to explore. So, just to clarify, I'm not a scanner expert. I'm not a trained psychologist. I'm just someone who suffered with this,
Right.
found out, fixed
Right.
my own problem,
Yeah.
and now I share it. Let me tell you, Brandon, one thing before I start the questions.
Sure.
Every single person who has ever identified with this description of being a scanner has had exactly the same reaction as you and me.
Right.
It's
Great.
that,
Yeah.
that
It makes sense.
same reaction, and and you know what? It's really rewarding to see for me. Yeah.
Dude, I mean, yeah, you gotta. You're kind of like you're like your own little Buddha running around, dude. You're helping people out, You gotta feel good about it. You can't feel bad.
Exactly. I feel really good about it, and I'm glad you gave me the opportunity to come on today and talk about this because it really does make such a huge difference. It solves so many problems in my life, so many problems. Anyway, so let me. So these things are what these are, and I'm gonna propose them to you, and all you're gonna do is just say, yes, I identify with that, and
Okay.
it's all not really questions, but you'll see what I mean.
Sure.
So if for people who are listening, if you've ever said these things to yourself, okay. So number one, Brandon, I'm going to ask you: have you ever said this to yourself? I can never stick to anything.
Absolutely.
That's a good one.
My wife is on. She should be like answering for me, right? Like she's watching, and I'll tell you what. Like when I found it, and I was like, I'm not crazy. This is
No.
real. But go ahead, man. Next one.
And it's actually good. We'll explain why it's good. So,
Okay.
all right. So next one is: I know I should focus on one thing, but which one?
Right. Absolutely.
Right. Okay. I lose interest in things I thought would interest me forever.
Absolutely. Yeah.
That's a big one.
Hey, I mean, I'll break it down right there for you real quick. I mean, when I started my podcast, before I started a podcast, I had to decide on something that I could do long term, right? If I'm going to start a podcast, that's a long game, right? And I was like, there's only one thing that's going to keep my interest for the rest of my life, and as far as I can tell, my children and being a dad, right? So, Go ahead.
Yeah, and so what you did was combine the things, so it's brilliant, and that's part of the solution. Okay, so the next one is I keep going off on another tangent, so over and over, right? Yeah, me too.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Hey, man, look, it's like there's no way I can't.
By the way, I'm reading these notes, and I'm a mad dog note taker. I write everything down. But
Were you always that way?
What's that?
Were you always that way? Were you always a big note taker?
No, I am now though, because
Okay.
I see the importance, and I want to capture things now. I never really cared, but I want to capture things now, and I go back and I actually use them. I use everything I write down eventually. So, but I'm doing these notes, and today, let me just stop real quick and just say, we're in the Manly Club group. We are doing this 30-day reset, basically. And Carl White, he's in the group. He's a nutritional guy. He's a bodybuilder. He's a cop. He's a Los Angeles police officer.
Okay.
Anyway, so he's leading this 30-day reset. Anyway, so that starts on Monday.
Okay.
It's coming up on Monday, and people are signing up. We're getting everybody going. I started last Monday.
Okay.
Okay. So the 30-day diet reset is you can eat meat and you can eat vegetables and you can eat fruit, and that's pretty much it. So
Right.
no sugar, no beer, no carbs, no nothing. And today's what? Thursday.
Right.
Well, what happens to your brain in those days is amazing. I can't remember a thing. It's almost like you say, "What's your name?" I went to stop and look at my notes. Seriously, and Carl told me this morning it's temporary. So I'm hoping it's get better. Right. But I can't remember a thing. So
wait, are you tying this in with your fasting setup too?
Yeah. Well, no, actually, yes. I'm going to, but I'm going to do the 30-day challenge first.
Okay.
And then I'm going to go back to the intermittent fasting, because doing the both at once, I think I should be able to do it. But at the beginning, like when I'm going through this phase of feeling like I'm about to die, I don't think I should be doing both.
Right on. Right on.
So anyway, so let me get back to these things. Okay, sure, so next one. I get bored as soon as I know how to do something.
Absolutely.
Does that resonate?
Yeah, man.
Yeah. I hate doing things twice.
Pretty much. Yeah. Even if I do it poorly the first time, I'm gonna I just did it, so it's good enough for me.
Right. I keep changing my mind about what I want to do, and I end up doing nothing sometimes.
Yeah. Where's Meg? Check, and check. Yes, sir.
Okay. So it's hard to choose a path because it might not be, or it might be the wrong one.
Yeah. Who wants to get tied up in doing the wrong thing for the rest of their lives, or spend time doing it?
Exactly. Okay.
I think that's just being smart, Steve.
I think everyone's put on this earth to do something, but I have struggled to find my something.
I have up until now. I feel like I'm in a pretty good place.
Good. It's hard to pay attention unless I'm doing many things at once.
Sometimes, yeah.
Sometimes, yeah. Okay. I pull away from what I'm doing because I'm afraid I'll miss something better.
I pull away from what I'm doing because I'm afraid I'll miss. Not so much. Not so much that one. I'm good at enjoying what it is I'm doing.
Okay. Do you feel like you may never be an expert at something?
Sometimes.
Yeah, I feel that way. I feel that way because I feel like I've never let myself become an expert. But that's not true. That's actually not true. And that's only a product of the thinking pattern that's part of being a scanner. It's part of the thinking pattern that we get stuck on. But the reality is that once you've mastered something, and you feel that boredom, and you feel that need to go on to something else, or that desire to do something else and do something, the next thing, that is, you've become an expert already. Okay. So you don't have to be an expert at something. So you don't have to do something for 25 years to be an expert. No. You don't have to be. You don't have to. So that's part of the thinking process here. So
do we have any more questions, sir?
No, those are all the questions.
I got one question for you right before we go on, though. I don't know if this was in the book or if it was a site that you'd posted, but I mean, pretty much scanners were sought after, if I recall correctly, prior to or until about like the World War II and right about there. Is that correct?
Well, they were called Renaissance men.
Right. Okay.
Right. Leonardo da Vinci was. You mentioned this in one of your videos. I watched one of your videos. I love your videos, by the way. They're awesome.
Thanks, sir.
Leonardo da Vinci is probably the best-known scanner ever. So think about the guy's accomplishments.
Right.
He was an artist. He was an inventor. Right. Look at how many different things. If you just research that one man, that he was the definition of a Renaissance man. He did it all. But, and this goes back to the expert thing. He was an expert at almost everything he did, but he didn't do it very long. How much can you do in 60 years, right? I mean, the guy did these incredible pieces of works of art. He was a philosopher. He invented. He's credited for inventing the parachute. Think about how different those things are.
Yeah, he's no joke.
Yeah, he's the real deal, right? The guy did a lot of stuff in a short period of time. Well, he became an expert at those things. And so you don't have to, and that's the whole thing. You don't have to spend your entire life, your entire working life on one thing to be considered an expert. You can be an expert at something after, just a couple of years. Right. Anyway, I learned that the hard way. I beat myself up over this. When I became an expert machinist, I remember I was working in a sheet metal shop, and the machinist shop was on the other side of the sheet metal shop. There was two, they were connected. And I was peaked. I was maxed out at $22 an hour. And I was 22 years old. I was making 22 bucks an hour, and I was one of the highest paid guys in the shop. And I was done. I was at the top.
Right.
So I was an expert, right? But I was still beating myself up because I was mentally done with machining.
Right.
I wanted to go and work in the sheet metal shop, and I beat myself up because now I had to buy a whole new set of tools. I had to do all these different things,
Right.
and then I had to learn a whole new trade.
Sure.
And then I had to deal with here's the hardest part about being a scanner, and this is I think the biggest reason why people are so relieved is I had to deal with talking to my friends and family, and I had to deal with telling them that I was going to switch gears again.
Right.
And I remember my mom saying, "Oh my God, right? What are you doing? Are you serious?" And that's fairly common when you're young to hopscotch around things, but I think it was worse for me because I had spent so much time, so I wasn't really even a good scanner. I was a bad scanner, so I would do things for long periods of time. And
Sure.
a good scanner, they quit real quick.
They know when it's time to move on.
Right, they just go, next thing,
Sure.
right? 6 months, 8 months. I would spend 2 or 3 years on these things,
Sure.
and then I felt like I mastered it. I felt like I was done with it. I'd move on. So, for me, the enlightening part of it, the relief, was that I was not, and this is really what I thought for a very long time. I thought that I was a loser. And I thought, this is really what losers do, right?
Mhm.
Because if you're not a loser in life, you go to college, you master something, right? You get your degree in something, you get really good at it, and then that's your career. And then you do that all the way to retirement, and then you're not a loser. And if you don't do that, you're a loser. And
Right.
that's what I thought. So I identified. Now, remember, this is before I realized what was actually happening,
Sure.
and so I identified with this is going to be. And so it's really hard to get anything going at that point because you lose confidence, you lose self-esteem, you lose your momentum.
Right.
It's tiring, it's exhausting. By the time I was 36 years old, and I was divorced, and I had done all these different careers. And I'd done all these different things, and I remember after the divorce, I was working in sales, and I was making a ton of money the whole time. Money is not the issue. I was making a ton of money. I was in sales, and at night, I was bouncing at a nightclub in Los Gatos, California. I was bouncing at a nightclub, and I was doing that because, once again, I was feeling done with sales. I was feeling done with sales, and I was thinking I need to do something else now. I need to rekindle and do something else. And I was moving on to something else. And I remember at that moment thinking to myself, this is not right. Something is wrong, and that's what got me onto the path. Anyway, so long story short, let me go back to I found the scanner solution. I found the solution. I identified with what it was. And then I felt that sense of relief, kind of like you, and kind of like a lot of people when they hear that scanner word, and then they hear the description, and they identify with it. And I felt that sense of relief. But then I said, okay, well, now what?
Right.
Now I know.
So what's next after? Right. You find out you're a scanner. What happens?
Yeah. Well, you're kind of there now, right?
Right. Yeah. I mean, so I picked up the book that you'd recommended, and there's different types of scanners that I was reading about. And here's you kind of identify with one. And since I just got the book and we're having this conversation, there were some exercises in there that I didn't do. There's some really good exercises that I can see that going through those exercises and writing some of these things out they're in there is going to help me to address my scanner tendencies, right? And enable me to be successful.
In spite of being,
I hate to say in spite of, but it enables me to use my scanner tendencies in a better way, or not feel that I'm broken, right? I think that's kind of where you came across. You're like, hey, here I go. I don't feel broken anymore. And just that part enough, and that part alone right there is, look, you could ask plenty of people that know me. They would never say that I felt like I was broken, but I identify certainly with you, and I can hear, I see the parallels where you're going through everything. And like, why can't I just focus on one thing for like a year? Right? Or why can't I want to do this one thing for a year or a lifetime? And in my head, that's to me, that would be hell on earth. Doing the same thing for the rest of my life would just be, it seems to me, it would be
torture,
self-imposed limitations, right? Why would you limit yourself to that? Look, now don't get me wrong too. Look, there are people that are out there that are amazing at being focused on one thing. And God bless them, man. God, go take that one thing and love it forever. But I can't do that. I don't want to. That's the other part. The other side of that is that there's no way that I would want to do that.
Yeah, we speak. Yeah, we're speaking the same language. I agree with 100% with that. I should have mentioned that earlier. There's nothing wrong with doing that one thing. That's not a bad thing. It's only bad for scanners.
Right.
It's only bad for us. But the people who don't have our personality type, great. But for us, it's torture. I would dread it. I would absolutely dread it. I remember I got this one job. I was working for Quicken in Silicon Valley. I spent 37 years in San Jose, in the middle of Silicon Valley, and I started working for Quicken, and I got this job, and this is a short thing, but I got this job, I got hired, and, it's really easy to get jobs in Silicon Valley. Once you get hired in with the Silicon Valley high-tech firm, like you get hired at Google or Facebook or, if you get hired at one, you're set. You're done. You can get into any of them. So I got in and I started working for Intuit. Intuit was the name of the company.
Right.
And so I got into this job and I got hired. It was a really good paying job, and I was doing some advanced technical support stuff. Anyway, so I remember I got hired. The day I got hired, and I walked in. I met this manager. And he walked me in, and it was the first time I'd ever been introduced to a cubicle. I had all my other jobs. I'd been like out in the field, or I'd done a variety of different things. I never cubicle, right? And so he set me up, and I remember asking him. I said, "So is this it?" I remember he was standing there in the cubicle with me, and I remember saying, "Is this it? Is this where I'm going to be?" He said, "Oh yeah, you're going to." I said, "So I can't, I don't go and." He's like, "No." He's like, "There's your computer, right?" And it was seriously, I felt like I was just sentenced to solitary confinement in prison.
It's like a stockyard.
Yeah, I was like, "Oh my God, are you serious?" I had no idea what I was getting into, but it was a really good paying job, so I stuck around for a little bit.
Sure.
It was horrible. Just sitting down at my desk in the morning. Seriously, I'm not even exaggerating. Physically made me nauseous. It was I needed to get out of that. And I said, okay, immediately I started planning, where's the next job? What am I going to do? And I did. I got out of that and I got back into sales. And at that point, that's when I got into home improvement sales, which I loved. And I took that to these big. I felt very successful. I took that.
You were VP of sales, right?
VP
of sales for that.
Yeah, I remember I started with this company. They were doing $1 million in sales, which is pretty good for a home improvement company.
Okay.
They were doing $1 million in sales, and I don't want to sound like the next Messiah, but I came in and I was so engaged with this job. Within 2 years, we were in $18 million in sales. Within 2 years.
Nice.
And of course, I was just pushing buttons and hitting levers, but it was all really because I was so passionate about it. Sure. But once again, being a scanner, that was short lived. I was done. I was making $180,000 a year.
Wow.
And I quit.
Wow.
But that's what scanners do.
Yeah.
That's what scanners do.
Sure.
I quit. I $180,000 a year, which in Silicon Valley, it ain't that much.
That's true. Once you're out there, it's a different story. That's like making $70K somewhere else.
Exactly. So, but it was pretty good. I felt really proud of myself. And,
absolutely. Yeah.
And so I quit to start my own thing, and I wanted to. That's when I got into startups.
Okay.
Because what I wanted to do is I wanted to embrace. In the military, in the Navy SEALs, they say embrace the suck.
Okay, no.
Well, that's a saying in the military.
All right.
Embrace the suck. Well,
Sure.
with me, it's embracing your flakiness, right?
Okay.
And once I identified with being a scanner, I wanted to embrace this. I didn't
Right.
want to fight it. I didn't feel like I needed to fight it. What I felt is I needed to feed it, and I needed to become a good scanner.
Okay.
That was my solution. That was my remedy.
Okay.
That's how I was going to fix myself. I
Okay.
realized I was a scanner, and now that's what I was going to do. So I got into the whole startup thing.
Okay. And that's how you fed. So that was your fix. That was how you.
Yeah,
Okay.
I was going to get into the startup. Silicon Valley, right?
Right.
Startups everywhere. All my friends were involved with startups, right?
Okay.
All I had to do was pick up the phone, make some calls, and start. What are you working on? What are
Sure.
you doing? Can I get involved?
Right.
I'll come in for stock only. I'll just options. I'll come in and work for options, right?
Right.
But what it allowed me to do, and I eventually did my own, but what it allowed me to do was to embrace the suck. Well, not embrace my flakiness. It allowed me to embrace this, and for the first time, explore the potential. It allowed me to explore the potential of being a really good scanner.
Sure.
I decided I was just going to be really good. If I'm a scanner, hey, I'm going to own it, and I'm just going to be really good at it. But what that did was it was such a relief because I gave myself permission. I forgot about everybody. I didn't care anymore about what people said.
Right.
My mom stopped caring. Once they see you with a house and a car and a boat and vacations, and once they see you doing stuff, they don't really care, right? It's like,
Sure.
you're fine. You're not killing anybody, right? You're not in jail, and you're making good money, so they don't really care. It's like, oh, you're doing something else. Hey, just give me your new phone number, right? And
Sure.
so people stopped caring. So that wasn't a big deal, but so I stopped caring about that part of it too, and I was proud of it. I would call and say, hey, I'm involved with this new startup. I'd be on the phone with my mom.
Sure.
Now this new thing. And she, oh, good for you. And so I exited some of these things. Some of them worked out well. Some of them I got worthless stock. Just it never paid off.
Sure.
And I did my own startup, which was in the home improvement industry. It was a technology startup. It was a service that for home improvement contractors to more easily find projects that they can build. And
Okay.
I was into that. That's really what I was good at. So we hired these. I raised a bunch of money. We took on about $1 million in capital, which if anybody's doing a startup, let me just stop right there. Don't take money. I talked about this in the group, and everybody thinks I'm crazy. Don't take money. Bootstrap it. Because when you take money, you get lazy,
Sure.
right?
Yeah.
Necessity is the thing that you want. You need that is the mother of all invention, is necessity.
Necessity's
When
mother
you're,
of all invention, yeah.
when you're struggling for money, you become very creative. You become very open-minded.
Resourceful.
But when you have
Yeah.
when you have $1 million in the bank like we did,
Right.
creativity and all that went out the window.
There's no sense of urgency, right?
Right.
You're like, hey man, we're good to go. We can make it for 6 months with what we
Mhm.
got,
Mhm.
and then 6 months comes and goes, and everybody's eating candy bars and drinking sodas, trying to figure out where to go next. I'm guessing.
Yeah, and we burned through $1 million, and that startup failed, and we lost $1 million, and a lot of the money was my money. A lot of the money was people, my friends, and my family around me, and combined, we lost $1 million on that deal. Well, that to a lot of people that's devastating, and for a lot of people that's where it ends, right?
Sure.
That's where the story ends.
Right.
You do something, and that's your passion, that's your dream, and you get everybody involved, and then it fails. That's the end of the story for a lot of people, even in Silicon Valley. Everybody thinks that, oh, everybody's so resilient in Silicon Valley. Well, I have seen so many guys just get plowed by their first failure.
Steve, real quick. So we're hopping. So now we're hopping from being a scanner.
Right.
Let's toss out the name of the book real quick that you threw to me. Do you have that handy? If not,
I don't have that handy.
I'll mention that later.
But the reason why it's so important, real quick, is that this allows us as scanners to work, and this is why it's so important. Is because doing these startups and doing these different things, you can do big things.
Right.
as a scanner, right here I was. I mean, I failed. I did very well on my second one, but you can do big things as a scanner.
Oh, right. No. So what I was going to say is
Yeah.
now we're flipping from kind of little bit from scanners into entrepreneurship and kind of if I'm hearing you, just like facing your first failure, right? And now, like like you're saying, a lot of people that's going to floor them. They're not going to do anything ever again, and they're going to go back into the cubicle even if it makes them sick, right? Their shoulders are gonna get rounded, and they're not going to. They feel like they failed at life, and really all they've done is they've taken a shot, Steve. And they should feel amazing that they've taken this shot. They shouldn't, they took a swing at it. They stepping out on the limb. No, I think that, I mean, you could tell me, like, when you're out there, you may feel like you're all alone and it's you against the world. And, that first defeat may have felt like kind of a suffering blow and all the world is watching. But in reality, it's just like, it's not that big of a deal. As a matter of fact, it's kind of amazing, regardless of, right? Am I right? I mean, that's how I'm feeling.
And you're exactly right. And the funny thing about the reason why Silicon Valley is like a different universe is that this is going to sound really bizarre. I think it's becoming more commonplace now, though. But the funny thing about Silicon Valley is you really don't get that much attention, and you don't really get that much respect until you've had that $1 million failure.
Okay.
Because the second time I did it, the second time I went around, I found success. I took a piece of what I had developed, the software, and I found success. And it's almost like it on your resume. It's like, oh, you've had a failed startup, like, hey, welcome to the group, and then they tell you about theirs, right? And so now you're in the club. Now you're in the failed startup club, and and now you can probably raise even more money. See, it's all very ironic. It's all very strange, but that's how it works.
Nice.
It was amazing. And the second time around, I didn't want any money. I wanted to bootstrap. Sure. But again, here I was living up to my scanner mentality. I was living within who I was. I was truly connecting, and I was allowing myself that freedom to explore. And that's what I try to get everybody to do. Anybody who identifies with being a scanner, the first thing I do is, please, I beg them, please. It's cool that he didn't take the money, right? Exactly. But believe me, I was tempted. But the one thing is to, like I said, embrace it, but then explore the possibilities and be fine with being a scanner. Be fine with it. Accept it as who you are, and you'll be amazed. You will be so surprised of how liberating that is.
Steve, let's one of the other things too. Let's talk about the process that it took you to. All right, so you found the scannerisms, scannerites, whatever they're called. You found scanners and scanning. Then this was after a bit of a personal growth journey where you found Buddhism. You're doing meditating. I mean, all these things I think kind of lead up to the scanner spot, and you're already at a place where you can accept it and take it in, right? So I imagine that most people, when they hear scanners or we're having this conversation, that unless they're being receptive and taking it with an open mind, they might poo-poo it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and absolutely. And I found that most people don't even really connect to the idea or the concept at all, unless they're a scanner themselves.
Okay.
Sure. Unless they're a scanner themselves. But here's the great thing about getting the message out. This is why I was so excited to do this with you today, is that it's not just trying to find the scanners. I do that. Every once in a while. I don't talk a lot about it. I talk a lot about self-mastery in the Facebook group. Right. But I don't talk really. I just throw it out there once in a while. Like you saw one of the posts I did. Okay. And it's almost like fishing, right? Yeah. To see if somebody or two people or three people respond, and then I can say, hey, here's what that is. And then they go off on their own and they explore it and they find out. But here's the great thing is even if people listening now don't identify as a scanner, they probably know somebody who is a scanner, and it will help them communicate with those people and understand those people and to support those people, because those people whoever's listening who's not a scanner, doesn't identify with scanner, but knows somebody who fits this description, they might be in the back of their mind saying, what is wrong with him? Why is he like that? Why is he always there's nothing wrong with that guy. If he's not stealing stuff, and he's not shooting people, and he's not drinking himself into oblivion, and he's not a drug addict, he's probably just a scanner, and you should probably reach out and help that guy.
Right.
And support him. And
Absolutely.
tell him what he might be, right.
Because
a lot of people just don't know until they hear it, and then they have that aha moment, right? But it's so important to do things like this, and you opening up your platform to spread the word. Hopefully, somebody hears it, maybe identifies it with themselves, or knows somebody in their family or in their circle of influence.
Absolutely,
and they can help them.
Like I said, I saw it, and I was like, the world's got to know about this, man. And even if I don't know always how many listeners I've got, but we get it out there, we get the word going. You never know who's going to pick it up, and whose life you're changing, we're changing, and getting out there and doing it. So I appreciate you coming on and sharing this bit about scanners. Let's talk. Let's get a couple minutes in about the group that you've got. Right? Why don't you tell the you've got the group's called the Manly Club. Why don't you give us? I think what I'm doing with this one, it looks like we might go a little long, Steve. Is that I'll probably end up posting it in two chunks, right? So let's talk a little bit about the group, the Manly Club. I think you hit on it a little bit in the beginning, where this is kind of like your pay it forward as a legacy piece, and so yeah, let's get into that a little bit and what got that going.
ManlyClub.com is actually a website, and it's kind of it's a website that I use now, and it's a platform. I write articles, I post to it. People can come on and they can actually click through and they can hire me as a consultant for all the many things that I can consult on because I'm a scanner. So people, I have a wide variety of things that I cover, but the Manly Club is really, it's a site that I started that is kind of the foundation for everything. Within the Manly Club, we're building what's called the Manly Club Online Achievement Center, which is it's a resource for men to come in and learn about self-mastery, which is just to pause real quick, I use self-mastery as a tool to help myself with the scanning lifestyle, because I needed to control. I needed a little bit more control. I needed a little bit more perspective. And I use stoicism and I use self-mastery to kind of deal with that whole thing. So it's kind of all one mechanism now for me. But individually, men who are interested in self-mastery, or men who are interested in legacy building, or men who are interested in starting their own business, they can come into the Manly Club website. They can get information. We're launching the Online Achievement Center now. We have instructors that are developing their courses now. It's not live right now, but it will be. And then people will be able to come in and take courses. Like I said, people can come and hire me directly to do consulting. And then we have the Facebook group, which is the Facebook group is like a byproduct of that. Okay. In the Facebook group, we talk a lot about self-mastery and stoicism. You're in the group, and legacy building. Legacy building is really important to me because we don't realize one thing about building our legacy, which is every single day, like it or not, every single day we are building our legacy. It doesn't matter if you're building it with intent. It doesn't matter if it's pre-planned and deliberate. Every single day, every time you talk to your wife, every time you talk to your children, every time you engage with your family, every time you engage with the people who work with you or work for you, you are slowly, incrementally building your legacy. And that's another aha moment that a lot of men have. They don't really realize it. They kind of get it, it's important. And so you ask somebody about their legacy, and it's like they kind of understand what it is. It's like, what do I want to be remembered for? I want to be remembered for this and that. Well, what are you actually doing with intent?
Yeah, let's talk legacy, right? Let's talk legacy for a second. Two parts of that. Where did you kind of come upon legacy? finding its importance in your life, and let's expand on the word. Right? How would you define legacy?
Legacy is what you want to be remembered for. And a lot of people have an automatic reaction to the word legacy,
Okay.
which is financial, right? And, you think, well, you leave your legacy and you're going to leave, millions of dollars to your family and all this real estate and all these businesses, which your legacy is part of that. That's definitely part of your legacy. But your legacy is also your kindness, or your humor. What is your eulogy going to sound like, right? When people are talking about you, people only, you've heard this before, but this is kind of a mantra when it comes to legacy building, which is people will only remember how you made them feel. It's the only thing they're going to remember. So what's more important? Yeah, granted, I spend a lot of time talking about money, and I spend a lot of time talking about startups and success and building your own business and getting and breaking away from the 9 to 5 and doing your own thing and leaving something to your children, leaving something to your family that they can either take and sell off or take and continue on, whatever it is. But really, at the end of the day, how you make them feel every single day is how you're going to slowly, incrementally build your legacy. And we blindly build our legacy. It's a habit. Every day we hug our wife and we're super nice, and it's not something that where you need to make these drastic changes. What it is, and this is what legacy is for me, is being intentional about our actions and out of my way to tell somebody who works for me that you're doing a great job and I appreciate them.
All right.
Right, we're intentionally doing that, and we do it sometimes. But my point is to do it all the time.
At what point did you kind of realize that you either were or were not or had not been intentional? Right. At what point did you realize that this was a choice you needed to be making or had already been making?
When I had the boys.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. When I had the boys, I really started realizing that my words coming out of my mouth, right? I mean, when you think about it, I was born and raised in Brooklyn, right? I'm doing a clean act today, right? But my words are pretty rough,
sure.
And my natural inclination is to blast people. I mean, that's just in my nature.
Sure.
I mean, if I took you right now back east where all my family is, and I introduced you to my uncles and my cousins and everybody, you'd be like, "Oh my God, these people are obnoxious," right?
Well, that's the Northeast. That's the Northeast for you.
That's just how they are. But that's how I am, okay. and I started realizing, it's like, wow, I'm treating my family the same way I'm treating my business. I was in sales. I'm very forward. I ask for the sale. I do not beat around the bush. If someone's not buying, and I ask them, I'm very direct, and sometimes that can be kind of, I've always used integrity selling, but it's very direct, it's very forward, and it can be kind of a little over the top. But I felt when my boys were first born, my oldest son, when he was first born, I was doing that with my family. I was very direct. I was very blunt. I started thinking to myself, what am I doing? These words are actually going to start meaning something when he starts understanding. And then I started, my mind, and started thinking, I can't do that. And then I started engaging with, what can I be showing him? What can I be showing him? He's gonna pay more attention to my actions than my words, right? The words are gonna go in one ear and out the other, right? Until he's probably, in his 20s. So, but he's going to pay attention to my actions. So I started cleaning up my acting, and I started being intentional about everything I did because of being a father. It was so important to me. And then that really led me thinking about my legacy, and it started leading me into wanting to be intentional with my legacy. And like I said, the biggest mistake that I see is that we leave our legacy to chance. And we just do quote our best. We wake up in the morning and we just, golly gee whiz, I'm just going to do my best, right?
Sure.
And that's a trap.
Sure.
You actually feel fulfilled. I'm doing my best. Well, if you really want to build your legacy and you really want to make an impact in this world and you really want to accomplish something and leave something, you have to be more intentional than just doing your best. Your best is great. You can fall asleep at night. You can feel good about yourself, right? But it really doesn't push us. It doesn't.
What's
it's
the next
satisfying.
Next level? Next level. We're doing our best. Next level is now. Let's do it with intent. Is that right? Let's not only do our best. Let's set up to do it with a purpose. Right.
Yeah. And my best phrase, my favorite phrase in the world is pre-planned and deliberate.
Okay.
Pre-planned, that means you thought about it.
Uh-huh.
I even do this, and this is really one of the hardest things for me was learning how to do this with my words and what I was saying to people. And I wanted to be pre-planned. I wanted to say the right things and make sure that it was landing correctly. Right. Coming from New York, coming from Brooklyn, you don't care how things land with people. You just don't care. That's their problem, right?
Right.
Well, when you get into the right mindset and you really want to build your legacy with intent and you really want to build and establish long-term relationships with not only your family, but the people you work with, and because these things are important, and then you start being more pre-planned and more deliberate with everything. It's your actions, it's your words, it's your time, right? Yeah. That's your legacy. Your legacy is in these little moments that we just kind of glaze through. We just plow through moment after moment after moment after moment. And in those little moments, as they're going by, your legacy is being built. And I'm trying to encourage men to not let that be a blur. Focus on those moments individually and take advantage and build your legacy, because it bleeds over. It bleeds over when you start doing that with people and you start doing that with your family and you start doing that with your life. It bleeds over to the quality of your work. Right. You are in the moment more often. You spend more time in the moment. You're more careful, right? You can still go fast. You can still move fast, but you're more engaged with how things are actually working. And it has helped me tremendously in business because now I've been able to slow down. Now I've been able to think about it, and I focus on treating people better and doing a better job. I want my value to be extreme value. I don't want it to be just equal value, right? It's like I paid them this amount of money and I got the equal value, and it didn't suck, right?
Sure.
It didn't suck, right? Who wants that? I want extreme value. I want them to say, yes, you should call Steve Miller for that. Right. That's what I want. Extreme value. Everything I'm talking about helps with that.
Would you say that it's not just the value, it's the overall experience, right? The value, I think, is kind of table stakes, right? Like don't show up unless you can provide that great value. I think that it's the overall experience that, and this is something else I see you do a very nice job of in the Manly Club. I feel like, just by watching the words, you adapt to the personalities very well, and you give. I feel like I get a unique experience just by being in the Facebook club, right? So I can only assume. I mean, Cliff, I feel like gets a unique experience by being there. And we've got Penny. What's his half Penny?
Yeah.
Yes, I mean, I feel like everybody in there gets like their unique experience, and I think that's a big part of it, right? So the value to me these days is like, look, that's table stakes, right? You show up, you either you're providing value or somebody's getting out of there because they can pretty much. That's a pretty level playing field out there these days. You can pretty much go get what you want anywhere. Now it's we want to get it from the person we want to get it from, right? And that experience. So that overall experience. So people are going to come to Steve Miller because not only is he going to give them the value that they want, he's going to give them that experience. And most likely, in sales, it's the relationship. It's the continued relationship that you have to care. You have to care about your customers.
Well, there's a lot of guys doing that very well. Justin Bailey. Do you know Justin Bailey? Code of Character Facebook group?
I didn't know he had a group, but I do. We do connect, and we are connected.
Yeah. Same kind of thing. It's that engagement. It's that slowing down, right? It's that slowing down and realizing that everything is happening in the moment, rather than just letting things just go by and letting the things just unfold the way they will. And I think that actually helps in a lot of different ways, not only just in Facebook groups and not only just with your business, but with your family, and with yourself. I do this with myself. I slow down, and now I'm in a much better place because I allow myself to be a scanner. I allow myself to explore. I no longer beat myself up. I'm planning right now. I'm talking to you right now, talking today about the Manly Club and the Facebook group and all these different things that I'm working on now. And I have my side business. Well, my side business is actually my core business, which is sales and marketing consulting. And that's my full-time business. But I have all these things, and I'm already planning the next two things.
Right.
One tremendous piece of advice before we go. I do not want to forget to say this about scanners. And if somebody out there is listening and they identify with being a scanner, this is the best wisdom that I've been able to extract from this, is once you embrace it and you're a scanner and you become fine with it, then you start being able to build a lifestyle around it, which is really important. Build a lifestyle around who you are.
Right.
And that's why everything I'm doing right now works so well, because it fits with being a scanner. But the best advice is to do not to try to make everything that you see and you become interested in. Do not try to make each one of those things a business.
Right. No.
Right.
Yeah.
Why
tell us why.
It's too hard, and businesses take a while to develop. I'm talking about businesses that you make, and that's the first inclination with scanners. They get an idea in their head, and the first thing they want to do is start an Instagram, and they want to start a Twitter page, and they want to start a blog, and they want to build a business around this idea. Well, you should let some ideas just be ideas and turn those things into hobbies. Turn some of those things into other types of passions. Right. Or do what I do, which is I oftentimes just teach those things. I don't turn them into a business.
Right.
Because it's a rat hole. If you try to turn, especially if you want to make money in this world, if you try to turn every single one of these things that pop in your head into a business, it gets really tough.
No doubt. I believe that. Now,
spend a lot of money too.
So then, you fell into the legacy part after you had your first child. You've got your children now. They're 8 and 13, 2 boys. Is that correct?
Yep.
What are their names, Buck?
Bryce is my oldest. He's the 13 years old, and Trent is the 8-year-old.
I love it. I look at the boys, and this wasn't until this kind of like a recent revelation. I looked at them as I love them. Being a father is probably one of the most amazing things, but I kind of look at them as like the gate. Like if you're not already into being of service to people outside of yourself, because look, I mean, when you don't have kids or children, you're really only responsible for yourself for the most part, most of us, right? I mean, and so when they come into your life, now you're responsible. Now you're responsible for their lives, and now you begin being of service to them, and it feels pretty great and amazing. And then next thing you know, you're like, I call them like the gateway drug to being of service to other people. And so it sounds similar to, when you come across the legacy aspect, you're like, so it's the children that they really open our eyes, I think, in a number of ways. I'm going to spin it over here to like the fatherhood spot a little bit and just kind of hang here for a minute. I mean, give us a tiny bit of background on Steve Miller, just on how you kind of grew up. It sounds like you came from the Northeast, and What was your family like? A little bit of upbringing and your relationship with your father.
My relationship with my father, my relationship with my father was great. But he was a workaholic. He worked in Manhattan. We lived in Brooklyn. He worked in Manhattan. Even though my parents were divorced when I was a year and a half, he was still around. He lived and worked in Manhattan. We lived in Brooklyn, so he was constantly coming, back and forth. And so he was a great dad, but he just wasn't there. He just worked himself to death. He died in his early 60s, back in 1990, mid 1990s.
Wow.
But he worked himself to death. He was a workaholic, and he didn't realize what he was doing. He didn't realize he was a good father, and he thought as long as he was contributing the dollars, and as long as nobody was dying, right? Nobody was, nothing bad was happening, and he was showing up, from time to time, and people would still recognize him when he showed up.
Thumbs up.
Yeah, good deal, right? And it was kind of how things are in New York in a way, and people weren't really, that wasn't really frowned upon. It was more like you're a champion because you work yourself, like a rented mule, right? It's like it was the admirable thing to do at that point. Right. And so it wasn't. I never really saw it as anything bad. I wanted to see him more, but he didn't spend the time. He didn't tell me how my brain worked. He didn't tell me how my emotions worked. Sure. He didn't tell me. My mom didn't know. Right?
Yeah. How could she?
So nobody told me, hey, here's what's happening in puberty, and here's what's happening with your thoughts, and here's why these things are happening. It's just none of that happened. And I can't really blame him because he felt like he was doing the right thing. He felt like, this is what I'm supposed to do. And all his brothers, he had, 7 or 8 brothers and, 2 sisters, and everybody did the same thing, right? It was like everybody did the same thing. Well, I witnessed all this as a youngster, and it really, really opened my eyes. And I decided, even though, I went through what I went through, I decided at a very young age, seeing how he was and seeing how many things he missed, not just the soccer games and not just all that stuff, but he didn't explain how to manage money. He didn't explain. He didn't. All of it was skipped. And when I felt the pain of having to go through this, of having to learn all this on my own, and I felt how much longer it takes having to learn it in real time, I decided I was not going to be that dad. I was going to be the dad that was home and engaged and active and constantly. So I knew especially when my son was first born, I knew what kind of dad I was going to be. All I needed to do was to craft and to build a lifestyle around it that allowed me to be the dad that I wanted to be based on witnessing what my dad did and how hard it was. I mean, I think if my dad was a little bit different, if he was a little bit more educated on how to raise children, and if he was more engaged and he had a little bit more time, he probably could have helped me through the pain of not knowing I was a scanner, right?
Yeah, sure. Who knew? Who knew? I mean, first of all, we can go back into that. We can go scanners. I mean, you found it. I'm not saying I'm digging for gold anywhere, but like the term, I look around a lot. I read a lot. I'm fairly knowledgeable about the world around me. Of course, the more, I'm sure the more you find out, the more you know, the less you find out, that type of thing, right? So, but the scanner thing, definitely a huge one for me to see. But it sounds like, so again, you're being an intentional father, right? So because of the relationship that you had. So, I mean,
now I can, like you, I'm glad you found it. Because your children might be scanners as well. And now you can, at a very young age, explain to them. I've been doing this now with my boys for a while. Right. I talk about, I use the words, scan. I use the words self-mastery. I use the words legacy with them constantly. And now I can fill in those blanks. They don't have to drift. They don't have to go through life trying to figure all this stuff out. I can identify it. I can show them. I don't know if my oldest son, I don't think is a scan. Well, no, reverse. My oldest son, I think, is going to be a scanner. My youngest son, I don't think so. But But however that turns out, now I can show them, and you can do the same.
Absolutely. No.
And you can say, here's what's going on.
Yeah.
Don't worry about it. You're not broken.
You're not broken. I think that's the key takeaway there with that. Now, would you feel then? I feel like we're given the ability now, and if we go back to your dad and my dad wasn't around, but I feel like we're in a phase of manhood and parenting where we are now able to be intentional parents, where we realize now that we don't have to be this. We're not just a slave to the money. We're not just a slave to the career. We're really opening up our brains and minds to being with our families. I feel like we're in this is kind of uncharted territory. Like you said, I think we've seen these dad groups popping up, right? I mean, they weren't around. This is to me like fairly new territory. Are you feeling the same way, or is it just me because I'm so focused on the fatherhood thing?
No, I think that there's a lot of information that's coming out that's readily available for people who are paying attention. Things that, really, neuroscience is really making these huge discoveries about how our brain works, and it really we're starting to connect the dots of how our brain functions, and then the benefits of things like mindfulness and gratitude, and the connections between meditation, and the connections between all of these, all these dots that have been floating around in the universe of all these years. They've all been there, but now I think that the information technology, the internet, gets the information out. The neuroscientists are making these discoveries. They're getting the information out. The universities are starting to push this information out faster. People are engaging with the data. They're unraveling what it means, and then they're bringing it to the masses in real time. It's a very short span of time from the neuroscience discoveries about how our brains function, and then when it actually gets delivered to people like you and I, who are just paying attention, right? And we don't have to be in the university and talking to professors. It's delivered to us on our screen. But if you're paying attention, and that's what I think what you're explaining, and what you're right about, is that there's a lot of men, a lot of fathers, a lot of great dads out there who are paying attention now, and they're grabbing that information, and they're unraveling it, and they're unpacking it, and they're taking the time to push it out to their circle of influence. Right? And their circle of influence, my circle is very small, right? I'm proud of my group, but it's only 1,200 guys, right? That's a tiny little circle. But think about the circle of influence of each one of the 1,200 men.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
So now you're propagating this information so fast and so quickly. And if you pause every day, you're taking time out of your day, you're pausing to try to get the message out there to your circle of influence. I'm stopping. Justin Bailey is stopping. Ryan Mickler is stopping. All these great men. There's a bunch of dads. There's a bunch of groups, and I don't want to skip anybody on purpose, but you know who they are, right? They're doing great work, but they're pausing and they're unpacking the data. They're unpacking the information. First of all, they're gathering the information, and then they're getting it out because they care about other men. And granted, some of them along the line are making money in the process. There's nothing wrong with that, because the time it takes to go gather that information, right? These guys are taking time. They got to go learn it themselves. They have to go find it themselves. They have to write the books themselves. They have to live the experience before they can teach it, right? So they should get paid for their time, right? If they do a mastermind group, they should charge for it. They did a lot of research, right? But they're getting it out there. 95% of it is free, right? They're a Facebook group, and they're freely dispersing all this information and experience. And kudos to them, right? They're champions.
Absolutely.
They're heroes.
Yeah. Well, I mean, look, it's like you said that too. You can go into any of these groups, and I've gone into a couple of the larger dad groups, father groups, and it's 5,000 people, and that might seem daunting. To me, 5,000, that's a lot of people. your group, I mean, your group will continue to grow. It's only been, coming up on 90 days. That's going to keep growing. I think some of these groups that are doing and providing the information are going to continue to grow, and they're going to have their spinoffs. But again, we take the whole, that's 5,000 out of 7 billion, right, in the world. So that's still just a drop in the hat. And, it's going to keep, I think, rippling, and people are going to keep joining these groups, and they're going to keep learning. And like I was saying before, there's going to be the point where, I'm going to hang out in Steve Miller's group because I love Steve Miller, right? And I'm not going to go hop over and, maybe I'll stray to another group every once in a while, but like, I don't like what I see there. So I come back over, right? It's all going to really depend on your interaction and your trust and faith in the group that you're in, and what you're looking for from it personally.
I go to a lot of groups. I may lead one group, but I go to a lot of different groups, and a lot of things resonate. A lot of things don't. I don't want to go into a group and talk about killing stuff. Hunting. I don't want to talk about hunting, right?
Sure.
But I'm okay. You go ahead and talk about hunting.
Right.
And I want to talk about, building my legacy, right?
Sure.
You're not wrong for wanting to talk hunting, because you might be a millionaire and you might have a great family life, and that's just your hobby. That's fine. I just don't choose to do that with my time, right?
Absolutely.
But the men who are in these groups, the men who are taking the time, when they get into the tribe, it's not just them. It's not just, and this is the great thing about it. It's them solving their own problems, but they stick around and they help other men solve their problems. When else in the history of this world has that ever happened at this scale? Never, right?
It's amazing. No, it's amazing. I think and I say it all the time. I think we're in an amazing place, an amazing time. One of the other things too is like being able to have this conversation the way you and I are having. It wouldn't have been possible, 20 years ago. And then
unless we met, on the street or at a job. And then, and then it was very limited too, right? You spend time with your friends and you talk about baseball, and you talk about football because you have limited time and you want to talk about something else. You don't want to talk about, these things of substance, right? And so the people you didn't bump into and the people you didn't know in real time, you didn't have any access to anybody, right? A very small circle. Maybe you knew 20 guys?
Sure.
And now, literally through my extension of being in groups like, Ryan Mickler's group, Border of Man, right? Huge group. He's got 35,000 guys in there. Well, if I go in there and I post something, I'm communicating with 35,000 men. And then I go into Code of Character, Justin Bailey's group, and I'm communicating with 2,500 men. And then in the same night, I go into my group and I communicate with 1,200 men, and all those guys have circle of influence. All those guys can take whatever I share with them and share with their circle. It's great. It's just, this has never happened, and we take it for granted right now, right? But this has never happened in the history of mankind. We should not take it for granted. We should use it.
And that's another part that I like to hit on most of the times, is that we have the ability to connect with 7 billion people. We've got, each one of us, a story that, we may not always think that it should be shared, but if we don't share our stories, then we're doing ourselves a disservice. And I think, I'm not trying to, like you said earlier, I'm not the Messiah or the coming Messiah, but I feel like if I don't share my story and some of the things that I'm going through, then I'm doing the world a disservice.
Yeah,
you
are
and
right.
So
right. I commend all you guys doing it, and I think it is a tremendous testament to the values of these men who are taking the time and who are investing their emotional time and their actual time. When you're sitting here talking to me and we're trying to get a message out to hopefully help somebody in the future, right? You are not with your family right now, and I'm not with my family right now, but we're doing it for the greater good, right? And that's a commendable act. That is something to be proud of. I'm proud of myself for doing it. I'm proud of the men who do it. And I would like to say one more thing about the men who go into these groups and they observe, right? There's nothing wrong with observing, but you will get so much more out of these groups if you engage And
Right.
I think a lot of men are worried. There's a little bit of fear. We're self-conscious. Am I going to say the right thing? Am I going to get blasted? Is somebody going to take it the wrong way? Is somebody going to see a video and look at me and think that, I look funny? Or, maybe they're going to, and men get very self-conscious, and so they don't do it. They
Right.
don't post their thoughts,
Yeah.
and they don't post they don't ask for help, and
Right.
they don't make a video introducing themselves, or they don't go on things like this, and they don't put themselves out there because they're nervous and they're self-conscious. All that goes back to self-mastery, which is part of the reason why I try to get self-mastery into the discussion.
Right.
But if people will just take that one, get out of your lane for a minute, you'll realize real quickly, and all of us went through this, you and I, it was all very kind of nerve-wracking. It's like you didn't know what was going on. But if you get out of your lane for a minute and just realize that none of that stuff is gonna happen.
Right.
Just get out there, comment, ask questions,
Yeah.
post stuff,
See,
make
is
videos.
your group closed? Because if I close my group just so that and I think most of the groups are, but I feel like I keep mine closed just so that is a sanctuary, right? I'm like, hey, look,
Yeah,
whatever's in
close.
here, this is Vegas, and aside from and I also say, hey, listen, the group is to be supportive of one another, right? We're here to help each other out, be supportive of each other, and come with your dreams, come with your crap, do whatever you need, put it in there, but it's a safe haven, right? And nobody's going to look at you any different. We've all got skeletons, man. We've all got our issues. We've all got whatever, but it's a place where you don't need to feel like you're being judged. You don't need to feel like it's going to get out. And, what you should feel the need to do is that's a place where you can just go in and throw your arms up and scream if you have to.
Yeah, there's nothing to worry about is my message. There's nothing to worry about.
Right.
And I don't think negatively of those men. I understand, but what I'm trying to say is trying to get the message out of what you're saying is there's nothing to worry about. I used to, when I first started the group, there was nobody in my group, right? It was like, 5 guys.
Right.
And I was posting stuff. I always say I'm a prolific poster. I post a lot of stuff.
You do.
You see it, right? It's a constant stream. Well, I learned you can't go back to see if anybody responded. You can't go back to see if anybody liked it. You can't go back. It's great if people engage with it and they hit the like button and they comment. That's great. And you can go back to those. But you got to be able to post and say stuff and be fine with it just going away.
Yeah.
There's always something to post. Right? There's always something to post.
That's a great point. Now let's wind it down a little bit.
Huh?
How do your kids feel like when you talk to them like this? Do they go crazy? Do they roll their eyes? How do the boys take it? How does your wife take it?
They're great. Well, I think homeschooling makes a lot of difference in that regard because my wife has a lot of control over their playtime with other kids, who they hang around with, their circle of influence. And she can kind of control a lot of that. And then it really helps me get their attention and get their focus. And they listen. Homeschooling is great. My son, I'm very proud of this. My son skipped 7th grade. And that's because of homeschooling. But the point is that he skipped 7th grade because he was fully engaged with school. And he's fully engaged with school because he listens. And he listens because his parents are there, right? We're here. Well, I don't leave. I don't go to Portland every day. I don't leave at 7 a.m., right? So he's engaging with school, and he's engaging with me, and he's engaging with my wife, and he's engaging with these things we're talking about every day, self-mastery and, the scanner topic and building your legacy and all these, entrepreneurship. He's engaging with all these things, and it's becoming part of who he is because he has the time and he doesn't have as much distraction from, school is very distracting. The social element is very distracting. It's very, it can kind of fragment your attention. And I think I owe a lot of what your question is, which is how do they accept that? I owe a lot of that to homeschooling. I value that tremendously, and I value working from home, and I value being able to provide a lifestyle where my wife doesn't have to work and she can teach. And so slowing that whole thing down,
Right.
really is the value in all this. And when you slow life down and you live in those moments as individual moments rather than the blur effect, rather than these days just whipping by, when you start engaging in these moments and you're very mindful of the passing of time, it's a lot more fulfilling for us as grown-ups and for children. And my two sons meditate.
That's
They
great.
meditate
That's
in
great.
bed
Nice.
at night by themselves
That's great.
because they understand the value, because they're able to slow down and think about these things. And they're going to go wild. They're going to hit 17, 18. They're going to go crazy. Girlfriends, partying. It's all coming, right? But I'm confident that they're going to have a nice foundation
Sure.
behind them. So they're very open. My wife loves it. My wife talks about all this stuff with me. I think that she has opened herself up to a lot of these discussions, which she's from Bolivia, and they don't really talk about a lot of these things. And but they believe in the family dynamic, right? In Bolivia, they want all their family. They don't want kids growing up and moving out when they're 18. They want their kids to stay, right? So there's a foundation there, but she's very into accepting these thought processes about mindfulness and meditation, and it's been very beneficial. And it's something that I think that getting the word out and helping other men who understand meditation and understanding how to get that. I mentioned monkey mind.
Right.
Monkey mind is that constant thought, right?
Right.
The constant churning that you lay in bed and the lights are off and you can't slow that thing down, right? That's monkey mind. Well, being able to slow that down, right, it really does help every aspect of your life. And men, they resist meditation. They call it woo-woo, right? The cosmic ooze, right? My friends, their eyes roll back in their head when I mention meditation sometimes, but you don't know what you're missing.
Sure. No, that's absolutely huge. That's something that I've recently, this past year, again, this past year for me has been quite the journey, and picking a lot of this stuff up and just absorbing it and implementing it. And we talk about the small steps that you can take day after day, and while each day they seem like small things, over time they build, and in a year for me, it's just been it's been a radical transformation. And so
that's awesome.
Yeah, no, it's been awesome. Like, I mean, it's blowing my mind, and I'm participating in it, so it's kind of crazy. But
that's great.
Let's go. I'm gonna have to land it here soon, brother. I mean, we could probably go on like all day.
Yeah.
But so love the group, love what you're doing. Let's give the couple of the sites that the audience can head out there and find you on again. Just the manlyclub.com, yeah?
Manlyclub.com. Everything is there. There's pass. You just go to manlyclub.com. There's pass to all my social, pass to all my articles.
Okay.
How to contact me. Everything is on there. Even links to the Facebook group. So everything kind of, is stems from and branches out from manlyclub.com.
Okay. Steve, I want to say thanks again for popping on here and talking. The big part of this for me was to share your knowledge with other people on scanners, and just how much, again, for me to find out about it, and like we talked about during the show, it just lifted the weight right off, and that awesome stuff. So thanks for sharing that with me. I love what you're doing. And before we go, I got to know, what's your favorite Steve Miller song?
All through high school, Steve Miller, when I was in high school, I graduated in 1984, and Steve Miller was pretty, so that didn't hurt me too much,
No, not at all.
It was kind of a cool thing. But, I'm a fan of all his music. I don't really have, I love the Joker. I love I love all of it. Fly Like an Eagle. All of it to me is all great, and I embrace it. And I love the fact that there's that connection. I love his music. Falls right in line with the Eagles, one of my favorite bands of all time.
Fantastic. Yeah.
Falls right in line with all that. So that's all right up my alley. And
good stuff.
And it's a very recognizable name, and it's very easy for people to remember my name, which is not always a good thing, but it's turned out to be pretty good.
Sure, sure. All right, brother. I'm gonna go ahead and shut us down. Thanks again for
Yes,
doing
sir.
this, and man, I'm gonna look forward to continued engagement on the Facebook group and your site.
Thanks, man.
You got it.
Take care.
Just.